Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is the second video in the Az-800 exam series. In the previous session, we discussed about Active Directory domain services along with its logical and physical components. Today, we are going to focus more deeply on physical components of Active Directory domain services. But before we start, let me share something important with you. If you are learning cloud technologies like Azure or Microsoft 365, you will notice that things change very frequently. That are always updates and new features in cloud technologies in Azure and Microsoft 365. Whatever you have learned in the cloud, that keep on changing. Changes are very frequent in cloud and Microsoft 365. However, on on-premise AD, on-premise Active Directory, the core concept have remained almost same for the last 20 years. So very few changes happen there. Obviously, server upgrade to 2016 to 2019, 2022, now to 2025. But the core concept of Active Directory, how it works, that remains same almost last 20 years. So learning Active Directory domain services and the on-premise infrastructure is like a one-time investment. So once you understand it well, it becomes a strong foundation for everything else. I thought I should say this before we start this exam Az-800 and before start this class, because it helps you to focus more on on-premise AD. Alright, let's discuss the physical components of ADDS in detail right now. Physical components in ADDS are those objects that are tangible or that describe tangible components in real world. So those things are called physical components. These are the physical components of Active Directory domain services. First one is domain controller, then data store, global catalog server, read-only domain controller, site, subnet, and these 6 are mentioned as the physical components of Active Directory domain services. Let's start with domain controller. A domain controller is a server in a network that store and manage Active Directory domain services database. It contains a copy of all your user accounts, which means this is the domain controller, and this particular domain controller include the copy of all your user accounts, your computers, your groups, and security information of the domain, all that included in this domain controller database. Most of the time, any domain controller can accept changes like adding a user or changing a password. You can make changes in any of the domain controller. What I want to say, you can have multiple domain controller. You can have multiple domain controller in your infrastructure. You can have a domain controller 1, 2, 3, or you can have multiple domain controller. Most of the time, any domain controller can accept changes. So you can change the password of this particular user in domain controller 2, so it will replicate to both the other domain controllers. Once changes are made, it replicates those changes automatically with all other domain controllers in the same domain. So every DC stays updated, which means if you make a changes in domain controller 1, the changes will be replicated to the 2 and 3, but according to the replication timing. Alright, so that's all about domain controller. Domain controller is the server where Active Directory domain services, that role is installed, and it store and manage Active Directory domain services database. Alright, let's move on. Now comes the second physical component is data store. Every domain controller, just now we have seen 3 domain controller. So every domain controller has its own copy of Active Directory database. One copy is with the first one, and the same copy is with the second domain controller, and the one more copy is with the same copy is with the domain controller 3. If you have multiple domain controller, every domain controller has its own copy of the Active Directory database. All right, so the second point is database store all information like user accounts, computers, group, password, everything is saved in the data store in the database. The database stored in the file called Ntds.dit. This is actually an interview question. Whoever attending as a system administrator for the on-premise, they will be asking what is the database of AD. So Ntds.dit is the database stored in the file called Ntds.dit. The file is saved in the C drive under Windows Ntds by default. If you want, you can make the changes to this path. Along with the main database file, there are also log files that help record changes. The database uses technology called Microsoft Jet database to store and manage the data. So that's all about data store. Now when I discuss about data store, the question arises in my mind is that how a data store becomes a physical component. Database is like a logical component, or it's not a tangible one, right? Then how the document says data store is a physical component, that doubt come to my mind when I discuss about this. So the answer to that is, even though the database is a software or data, it is physically saved on hard drive or SSD or the other technologies. That could be the reason why that could be one reason why Microsoft consider data store as a physical component. Description of physical, if you check the definition of physical components, it says that described tangible components in the real world. That described as a tangible, so data store can be described as a tangible component in the real world. That could be the reason why Microsoft consider data store as a physical component. All right, then comes the third one, global catalog server. What is this global catalog server? Let's understand that first. It stores a partial, is a domain controller. It stores partial or read-only copy of all Active Directory object in the entire forest, not just its own domain. So it store the global catalog server store partial or read-only copy of all Active Directory object in the entire forest, not in the just its own domain. What is the difference between domain and forest? We have discussed in the previous session. If you have not watched, you can watch that first and understand the difference between the forest and the domain. And the next point is that this help users and computers quickly search and find information from other domains. So consider we have 2-3 domains here, and each domain have users, computers, groups, and all the data, and it is different in each domain. So as it is having, it store the partial and read-only copy of all Active Directory object in the entire forest, you can quickly search and find information from other domains. Why it is useful? In a network with many domains, it normally takes longer to search and data stored in other domain. So global catalog, as it keeps a partial copy and it store the information about the other domains, you can easily search it. A global catalog server speed up the process by already having summary of all object. As it is having the summary of all object, the catalog server speed up the process of search, and it completely speed up the processes. Here we have a picture which I created using the help of AI. Here, this is the global catalog server, one of the domain controller, read only copy of all object in the multiple domain forest. This is domain A, domain B, and domain C. As the global catalog server is having the read only copy of all this object, the search will be easier, speed up of the process will be easier, will be faster. So that is the advantage of having a global catalog server, and that is one physical component of the ADDS. Next component is nothing but the read-only domain controller, which in the short we can say RODC, read-only domain controller. What is read-only domain controller? Read-only domain controller is type of a domain controller that has read-only access to the Active Directory database. You can only view the users and computers, groups and all. You cannot make any changes in the RODC. This means it can show information but cannot make changes like creating a user or updating the password. Nothing you cannot do in the read-only domain controller. But you can see you can view only access, view only. You can view the users, you can view the computers, groups, things you can view it, but you cannot make any changes. So where it is used, where these RODC are used in the real world, where this RODC, read-only domain control, is used in the real world. First one, branch offices or remote location and places where security is not very strong. Consider we have a branch in a remote location. This is our head office where we have our domain controller, main domain controller, and this is our branch. Here security is not very strong and it is in a remote location. So in such scenario, you can ask users to authenticate from this RODC, okay, but it is having only view only access, only read only access it is having. It doesn't have, you cannot make any changes. If you want to make any changes, then you'll have to contact to the head office, and from this main domain controller you can make the changes. And if in case and the other point is that places with less IT support. In this remote location, you do not have an IT administrator to make any changes or to reset the path or to IT related things. In such places, we keep a read-only domain controller. Why use RODC? It helps keep the network secure. Even if someone steal or hack RODC, they cannot change or damage the main Active Directory. They can steal the data, but they cannot make any changes. They cannot make any change or damage the main Active Directory. It is safe and useful for smaller offices. So that is why we required RODC, read-only domain controller, and that is one of the physical component of the Active Directory domain services. Alright, the next physical component is nothing but site. What is site? A site in Active Directory represents a physical location like an office, building, or a branch in a company. It contains computers, servers, services that are located in the same physical location. For example, this is one site in Mumbai, in India. Mumbai, and we have other sites somewhere in Delhi. We can have other site even in London. So in each site you can have different domain controllers. You can have it's a physical location. You can have an office there, building, branch, and it contains computers, servers, services that are located in this physical location. Here everything is there. Here also you have computers, you have servers, you have services in this physical location. The same you have in Delhi, you have in London. So such physical locations are called site in ADDS, and that is one of the physical component of Active Directory domain services. So in a simple word, you can say site means it's a physical location like Delhi office or London office. That's called site. Now the other physical component is nothing but subnet. A subnet is a small part of bigger network. It's a group of IP address assigned to a computer or devices in a particular location or site. One site can have one or more subnet. Consider this is a bigger network, and a subnet is a part of that bigger network. You can slice a bigger network into different subnet, and you can arrange the security accordingly. It's a group of IP address assigned to computers or devices in a particular location or site. One site itself can have one or more subnet. Alright, that's all about subnet, and that is one physical component of Active Directory domain services. So in a very simple words, you can say it as, what you can say as a subnet is like dividing a big network into smaller network, so that devices in each section can communicate easily and be managed better. Fine, that's all about the physical components of the ADDS. In the next session, let's create some user, and we will talk about the managed service account, then manage group service, group accounts and all. We will be discussing on the next class. Thanks for watching. We'll meet you in another video. Till then, goodbye.